He said, I got my days mixed up, and I'm going to be there yesterday, if not sooner. Then he texted and said, it's slippery in here. And he said, in the Red Room, Special Agent Dale Cooper has already won the Emmy.
It's award season.
It is for podcasting.
The 12th Annual Podcast Award nominations are now open until July 31st.
You can vote Twin Peaks Unwrapped and get us nominated in 2 categories.
The People's Choice and TV and Film.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. So you please visit www.podcastawards.com.
All you have to do is click on the nominations are open banner, sign up, then vote. It is that easy. It will take less than 5 minutes of your time.
You only have until July 31st when they close voting, so please visit podcastawards.com today. Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is...
Bryon Kazaska.
Hi, Bryon.
Hey, Ben. How are you?
Great. What are we doing today?
Today, we have an awesome show, and I say that every show, but this show, I mean it even more than I meant it last week and the week before that.
Last week, we were talking about Room to Dream book with Rob from
Yes.
25 Years Later site. How can we top that?
Get the author from Room to Dream.
And we've got Kristine McKenna on the phone. You know, in 1990s press kit for Wild at Heart, David's biography was just 4 words. Eagle Scout, Missoula, Montana.
You almost called the book that.
Did you really? You give us so much more than that, and we love the book. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
You've known David Lynch for a long time. Can you share with us how you met him?
In the late 70s, I saw Eraserhead when it had its 4-year run at the New Art Theater, and I was writing for the Los Angeles Times and for a few other publications at that time, so I wanted to interview David, and I tracked him down, and he was pretty easy to find then because he was just trying to get going with his career. And so we met at a coffee shop, of course. He liked what I wrote about him, and we just stayed in touch. Yeah, David's very loyal. You know, if you find somebody, he liked the way I wrote about him, so he had me write about him again and again.
Isn't that awesome? And I think it was a few years ago. Was it last year? The Festival of Disruption. You were involved with that?
Yeah, I was with the last 2 festivals of Disruption. Last year I did several interviews for him, and the year before, in the first one, I interviewed Frank Gehry.
And Bryon and I got to go to the New York one this past year, so that was
it was amazing.
Yeah.
Sounded good. I'm sorry I missed it.
Why do you think David Lynch decided to do this book now?
Well, I proposed it to him, and frankly, I don't know why he said yes. Well, the case I made for it was I said 2 things. He hates all the misinformation and wrong information that's out there about him. I said people are going to continue writing about your life, and here's a chance for you to get the story straight and tell it the way you want it told. And I also said other people make money off the story of your life. Why don't you? So he said yes.
Nice. How'd you come up with the structure? So it's an interesting structure where you take a piece and he takes a piece. How did that come about?
Well, that came about because I wanted David's voice to be as prominent as possible in the book, and I didn't want to just interview him and interweave his quotes with everybody else's quotes, partly because David has a very unfettered imagination. When he talks, he'll go down avenues you couldn't have even thought of. And I knew if I just interviewed him, I wouldn't get as much. He'd answer the questions I gave him, but there's a lot of stories in the book that there's no way they would have come up if I'd just been interviewing him.
Yeah.
Like the Marlon Brando stories. It just seemed like a good way to make him really present in the book.
I really like it. I think it works. I think it really did.
Thank you.
Did you do all the research, and then when all the research was done, you'd give him some of it, and he would then respond?
I would write a chapter, complete a chapter, send it to him. He would read it. Then we'd have a session, and he would talk to me. And I would record it and turn it into text. And then he would edit that text. There were a lot of times that he cut things out. So that's kind of how his text was shaped.
The part that you've recorded for the initial reaction, is that the audio that we hear in the audiobook?
I haven't been able to bring myself to listen to the audiobook.
Oh, yeah?
But here's what happened with that. David and I were recording our parts the same week. So I go into the studio on Monday, and at the end of Monday, I get a call, and David sat down to do it, and he said, I can't do this. You know, this just feels like bullshit. I'm not going to do this. And so I emailed him, and I said, David, you are a great storyteller. You've told these stories many times. I'm going to go through the text, just annotate it, you know, just say, this is that anecdote. Just tell that story. So that's how he did it. He didn't read the text. He told stories from the chapters. And I know that there's things on the audiobook that aren't in the book, and much in the book that's not on the audiobook.
I like that of it. It was very interesting online. There was a lot of commotion. People were like, the audio is different from the book. Ben and myself were like, wow, it's very special, though. And I think it's very David Lynchian to do, but I think it really adds another dimension. And I'm like, man, I wish all people who did a biography like this is how they did it, because it doesn't sound like he's just reading. It just sounds more personalized and more warmth to it. Yeah, like he's not reading from a script.
Right.
Yeah, I know he's not reading from a script. I want to listen to his parts, but I definitely don't want to listen to my parts. But yes, I do want to listen to it, because he is a great storyteller. He's hilarious.
Yeah, and he's talking from the heart. And you're great too. You shouldn't be embarrassed.
Yeah, you were wonderful. I thought you sold it.
Well, thank you.
Story, he talks about the birth of Jennifer, and it's very uncommon those days for men to be there for delivery. And in the audiobook, he goes and he says, it was beautiful and powerful. And then he goes on and he goes to a taxi, and the taxi driver says, it's a beautiful day. And he goes on and says, we went home, and all the kids in the neighborhood, he showed them the baby and stuff. And so it was like, this is so beautiful. And it's not in the book.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's so good.
I wish he told me all that. He didn't. So so I'm glad at least it's on the audiobook.
Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you for sharing that, because I was curious to know, like, how did that process work, and like how come it's one place and not in another place?
It was entirely up to David. When he went back, there were some things he felt like expanding on, and other things he didn't even want to address. So he kind of edited as he went along when he was doing the audiobook.
Because of David Lynch's workload with Twin Peaks and his nude book and everything else he's doing, how long did it take you guys to do this book from start to finish? Like, when was the beginning point, and when did you guys wrap it all up?
I actually did it very, very quickly. It took 3 years. He agreed to do the book, oddly enough, about a week before Twin Peaks was finally greenlit. So he was shooting and editing it while we were working on the book.
Wow.
So it was hard. He was wildly busy then, but we kept to a schedule and we got it done. He's very good about making deadlines.
I think at one point it was going to come out in 2017, but I think a lot of us are excited it didn't come out in 2017 because you got to include stuff from the Twin Peaks return that you wouldn't have probably been able to talk about if it had come out last year.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, David was such a stickler. Nobody was allowed to talk to me until the last episode had aired. So I had to write that last chapter in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
The book was going to go on press. So I had to do that chapter really quickly, because nobody could talk to me and nobody violates his wishes about things like that.
Yeah.
So the book would feel incomplete without the return being in there. I agree with you.
And you did more than 100 interviews for this book. Were there things you learned about David that you didn't know about?
Yes, a lot of things. And this sounds kind of corny to say, but what I learned is he's a really good guy. Like, he really has helped a lot of people, and he's very generous. That's probably the most surprising thing, because I've interviewed lots of powerful, famous people, and usually it's not the case that the closer you get, the better they look. Quite the opposite. With David, I learned that, and I also learned how unpredictable he is. You never know what he's going to like or not like. I kind of knew him pretty well before we started this, because I've been writing about him for like 30 years.
For me, I feel like I learned that he was kind of a ladies' man. I mean,
yes.
You didn't know that?
I don't know why I didn't realize that, because he's so charming. He had girlfriends in kindergarten.
Yeah, he's been a ladies' man since he was out of the womb.
Girls love David. Women love him. He's always had a lot of girlfriends, and he loves women. So And he started young, as he says in the book.
Wow.
Like 4th grade or kindergarten,
Yeah.
he was carrying somebody's towel. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite interviews and stories that you obtained in researching the book?
Well, when I started working on the book, I had just moved to a new neighborhood. David's first wife lived 2 doors up from me, which was really weird.
Yeah.
And we became good friends, and she was an enormous help. There were a couple people who I really loved talking to, and I feel like I got to know them. That would be Peggy, his first wife, and Mary Fisk, his second wife, who's really a wonderful person. And it was great getting to meet Jack Fisk, because he's such an important part of David's world, and he's a great artist. And also Richard Beamer. He and I became friends. But everybody in David's world is nice, because David doesn't have not nice people around. He doesn't have divas. So, yeah, everybody was great, really.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. We've been doing this show for like 3 years, and we've done a lot of interviews. And you're right, all the people we've ever talked to that related to David have been such nice people.
Oh, very nice.
We got to talk to Richard Beamer.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
So many good people.
Oh, isn't he wonderful?
He really
I
is.
love Richard. Yeah.
Were there people you wish you could have interviewed? I'm thinking about people even like maybe who have died, like Catherine Coulson.
Well, I did interview Catherine Coulson. In fact, I was friends with Catherine, independent of David, for decades. I met her like in 1990. John Hurt, I missed him, obviously. Alan Splett, it was really sad I couldn't talk to him.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage is the only person who said no. I have no idea why he said no, but he said no.
Huh.
Patricia Arquette just never got back to me, even though I tried for 3 years to talk to her. And David's parents, it would have been great to talk to them because they're such the keystone to who he is.
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, Alan Splett, it was really sad I couldn't talk to him because he was so brilliant, for one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
funny-
And Jack Nance, of course.
Of course.
It's terrible I didn't get to talk to Jack Nance. Yeah.
I was thinking there's a story about the father, and there was, I think, a mouse in the house, and he had to get a bat and beat it with clothes. It's like, whoa.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, boy, that seems so
And
violent.
I think that story is, I think that's a really violent story, and I included that. There's a couple stories like that, like when his father shoots a porcupine, and then he's trying to pop a cow.
Right.
There were these violent things in his childhood, but because his father grew up on a ranch, basically, in a rural environment, there were guns and hunting and shooting, and like a mouse being beaten to death in a closet was no big deal, but it seemed pretty weird to me.
Yeah.
It does fit into his narrative now, who he is, like there is like this sexual violence in his work. And I always wondered where it came from, and now I know.
He still seemed to have a normal life, but there were some things that happened that probably influenced him or inspired him. Or
He doesn't seem to be afraid of death. I mean, the one story that stood out to me was when he went into the morgue. He wanted to go into the morgue and look at real dead bodies, and they let him, and it didn't bother him.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
I can't do that today. Growing up, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
No, that's that. It's an interesting aspect of him. I think now his comfort with mortality has to do with his spiritual beliefs. He wasn't meditating when he visited the morgue, but I think that those kinds of understandings were just maybe an intuitive part of who he is.
Yeah.
Totally. So did the interviewees know that David would be responding to their stories?
They didn't know how the book was going to be structured. And all they knew was that David had given them permission to talk to me and that he would be reviewing what was in the book. So, yeah. He didn't cut other people. He let everybody else have their say.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah, he seemed very respectful to other people's remembrance or remembering that time, but he never
it was interesting. I love the way it's like a call and response. I remember in one of the chapters, one of his friends said, David came off as confident, and then David responded in a way saying he found himself to be a little bit shy at times. So people perceived him as the ladies' man. But yeah, he did like the ladies, but he maybe found himself to be shy. So it's great to hear both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Peggy, his first wife, just said that when he was in high school, he was a golden boy. But when he talks about his high school experience, he saw himself as a messed up juvenile delinquent, and he said it was the worst time of his life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And he seems so open about responding to things, and I don't know if that's you, that you got things out of him, that he was just at a point in his life where he is very open to sharing his life.
Well, I think he trusts me because I've known him for so long, and he also felt free to talk because he knew that nothing he didn't want in the book was going to go in there. Most of the cutting he did was on his own sections. He was never satisfied with how he talked about transcendental meditation and the Maharishi. He felt like he just didn't get that right, so he cut a lot of that out. That was the main cutting he did.
So, I'm so glad you mentioned in the book about DavidLynch.com. I was actually a member back in the day. He was ahead of his time. This is before YouTube, that he was creating videos and content for the web. How do you think Lynch feels about it now, looking back during that period of making this website?
I think he was ultimately, and I think it comes across in the book, that he was ultimately a little disappointed, you know. He, in a way, he felt like he was going to start a mini studio, and income from the site would allow him to produce content. But it just is too much work. He was the only one really producing content.
Yeah.
And as he said, you could spend months making 4 pieces, and then somebody visits the site in one afternoon, and they don't ever have to come back to it for a year.
It's true.
So I think he was a little disappointed in how it played out. But I know he loved communicating with his community and the people that were involved in it. Yeah.
I mean, the way David Lynch was doing it then, that's the only way, without getting advertisers
personally,
involved.
I would rather have him working on a film or a series.
That's true. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But stick with his new movie coming out, hopefully.
You're dreaming.
Yeah.
So you got to be on the set with David in the past when he was making his older films. Did you get to be on the new set during the Twin Peaks: The Return?
Yes, I was. I went twice.
Wow.
I was there when they were shooting Red Room stuff, which there was actually quite a bit of Red Room stuff in there. It was a really closed set. There was such a shroud of secrecy around the show, but yeah, it was great being there. His sets are so much fun because he makes them fun. Yeah.
The documentaries that came out on the Blu-ray really showed that. So cool.
So would you have seen Richard that day when you were there? Because he might have been.
He was there, and it was before we met. It was before we met, and he then sent me footage that I was in. He didn't end up putting it in the film, but we were there the same day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How was it interviewing Twin Peaks cast and crew? And I'm just so curious, did you get to check out the script at all? Have you seen the Twin Peaks script?
I've never seen the Twin Peaks script, and I know that it was a work in progress, that he was still writing on the set. It was very fluid, and he changed it a lot. I would love to see it. I bet there's notes scribbled all over it. So I never saw the script, and as most of the actors pointed out, they didn't see the script either. They just saw their lines of dialogue and nothing else.
Yeah, Kyle was the only one that got to read the whole thing.
I can't believe Kyle didn't get an Emmy nomination. Wasn't that shocking?
It's shocking. It's really disappointed. I think the community is very disappointed by that. It's amazing that he did 3 different parts, and I was amazed what he was able to do. And so good.
Him and Naomi Watts. I thought Naomi Watts. If anybody, I love Kyle and all, but she was phenomenal as well. And I thought those two out of everyone, I'm like, come on, one of them's got to get it.
What I had heard though is so I think they could only submit part 8 and part 16, and some wonder did they get to showcase Kyle's performance as good in those 2 parts? I don't know.
In episode 8, which is my favorite of the series, Kyle's only in the first scene.
Right.
He's
gets
gone
shot.
from the rest of it.
Right. And that one seems to be all the talk. I think a lot of them that they got 9 nominations, and most of them look like they were for part 8.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they should have seen all the work of Twin Peaks. But if you're looking at those 2 parts, did they not showcase him enough? Yeah, that's.
Well, the people have have to base it on the entire series. I mean, I thought the rest of them were based that way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they do. I think that, like, when you do writing and certain things, you have to only focus on one episode.
Well, anyhow, we know Kyle was great, and I think Kyle knows Kyle was great.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
And even back in 90 and 91, he never won an Emmy.
So crazy, because the first season, Kyle, he's so delightful and funny, and it's such a wonderful character he creates.
It's so amazing.
He should have won then, too.
He really should. So you look back, even back then, it's like 25 years or whatever, they weren't getting the respect they deserve. But
David and Mark Frost being nominated is awesome.
Yeah,
it's so
David
good.
is for directing
and writing.
Yes.
Yeah,
and episode 8 is a technical masterpiece, so it's great that they got for sound and editing and cinematography and all that. Yeah.
And Bryon and I, this is several months ago, we went to MoMA and they did a weekend screening of all parts, and we got to see part 8 on the big screen, and it was such a beautiful thing. It was something else.
God, that must have been awesome.
It was so incredible.
Wow.
It was so amazing.
Yeah.
And we talked to Sabrina, and she was talking about how they had to redo the coloring, and they have to do all this stuff just to change it to be on the big screen. It was a beautiful work, and
beautiful print.
I don't know if we'll ever get that again, if we'll ever get to see it, but it was pretty special.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I'd love to see it big like that. That must have been magnificent.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is more of a statement question, and I just want to know what your feelings are, but after finishing the book, a part of me was like, wow, to me this seems like a book that was made for the fans, but I felt like this is something almost more for his family. I don't know. Do you get that impression?
It's for the fans that way, too.
Yeah.
I mean, David is very close to his family and always has been. Unlike a lot of artists who just kind of go off on their own. No, it's for the fans, too. Because all his key people are in there, from his work. But I hope the family likes the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also Riley and Austin wouldn't talk to me.
Wow.
Who wouldn't?
Sons, Riley and Austin.
Isn't that strange?
Oh, you're right.
I can understand that. I thought about it, and I thought, I wouldn't want to be interviewed about my parents.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say?
I kind of understood. It made sense to me, yeah.
And that's something.
Yeah.
So this is our last question, which is, I've heard you're working on a magazine piece about David Lynch, which includes Richard Beamer's photos. Can you share...
Wait, how did you know that? How did you know that?
Richard Beamer.
Richard Beamer.
Yes, it's a new film quarterly. It's called Scenes. Every issue will sort of showcase one filmmaker, and the first issue is about David. So there's an excerpt from the book. There's Richard Beamer's photos. There's a piece by a writer named Greg Burke on the relationship between David's music and Penderecki, the Polish composer that he loves, who did the music in episode 8. That piece, Serenity for the Victims of Hiroshima.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes.
What other David piece is there in there? There's one other one, but God, I can't think of what it is. Anyhow, yes. So this is coming out this fall.
And what is the name again of the magazine?
It's called Scenes, Scenes. It sounds like a porn mag. I don't think it's a good title, but whatever.
Scenes.
Well, we'll definitely be getting it. We're excited to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be sure you get a copy.
And what are you doing next? What are you working on now?
Starting to get another book biography project off the ground, but I don't want to jinx it by saying who it's with, but that's what I'll be doing next after I recover from this. This was a big push. I had to totally focus to get this done in 3 years. So I'm goofing around a lot too right now.
Well, the book is so impressive. It really shows the work that you put into it. It really is an incredible piece. Thank you for all you've done with this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. We all love David, and he deserves our support.
Thank you so much, Kristine McKenna, for being on today's show. It was truly an honor. We got to be one of the only people in the United States to interview you. So far. That's pretty cool.
Amazing person. I thought she did a great job with the writing of this book. I thought it was so good.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff we talked about last week with Rob that we were wondering about the audio version and about the way it was structured. And I think she answered all those questions for us. And I think the community is really going to love this because we got some answers.
Yeah.
Which is something hard to do nowadays when it comes to David Lynch.
I know. So many answers. And there's still so many things to talk about with this book. I feel like like this book is going to be with us for a long time that we can look at. It's really a fascinating book.
It's a treasure trove of little nuggets of David Lynch. It really opened my mind about who he is as a person. It explained a lot. I think rewatching his films, which is something I really want to do in order, this book puts that fire in me to do that. Now I know the history behind those movies.
Right.
And I think will make it even better.
All right. Well, I mean, if you want to know more about Room to Dream, I would definitely go get it at Amazon probably, or wherever you go and get your books. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend you go to 25 Years Later's site and continue to check out their coverage of the book.
Yes. And if you have a comment, question, or query, please send us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. Facebook, we're kicking butt. Like us on the old Facebook, and if Facebook's not your thing, you can follow us on Twitter at Twin Peaks Unwrapped. And hey, if social media is not your thing, you just want to hang out, go to twinpeaksunwrapped.com. That's where our show is hosted. We're on Spotify. Follow us on Spotify. You can like us, and you can leave us a 5-star review and leave us a nice little comment on iTunes. And we're also on Google Play, Stitcher, and also, we said this in the beginning of the show. I'm just going to friendly remind you right now, we are in the nominations of the Podcast Awards, just like last year. We are under the 2 categories, TV and film, and People's Choice. So it's in the show notes. You go in, you sign up. It takes less than 5 minutes, your name, your email, just to make sure it's a real person. They don't want, like, meddling from other countries. I think that's what it is. And so you just do that, and then you'll find our name in there, and you can vote for other podcasts in different categories as well. And this gets us in the running. So if enough people vote for us to be nominated, then the nominations will come out.
Yeah, last year we were in the top 10 for TV and film, which was wonderful to be a part of that group of the top 10 of all podcasts. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, we got nominated last year, which was really cool, and maybe this year we can go even further. We can do it.
Number one.
I feel like this year could be our year.
Sounds good.
If we can get nominated.
So please nominate us.
Yeah. Just go vote, share with other people, get other people to vote, and the deadline is July 31st.
You want to talk about what's happening next week?
Next week, if all goes well,
we're going to do a live show.
I
think we're going to get JC here, and we will do a live show, 6 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, July 31st.
On the old Twitter.
We're going
to be live on Twitter recording our show. The show will go out that evening after we record it, so you can still listen to the show like you normally do. It will just be us being goofballs like we are during our live show. We might have some other announcements about this live show.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Stay tuned to Facebook and Twitter,
yes,
and we might talk about some other things that maybe you guys can be a part of.
Yeah, so stay tuned to that. Keep your eyes and ears on social media about those announcements, and hopefully we'll see you guys during that live show.
See you next week.
I'll see you in old trees. I'll see you in the trees. Sycamore.